you're a nerd, let me see your hands. If you're a nerd and you're proud, put your hand up. Come on. Man, I am a nerd. I've been a nerd my whole life. I don't play any sports. I don't do anything masculine. I am a geek. And my whole life I've collected comic books. Anybody in here ever collect comic books? Can I see some hands? My people, my people, my people. Okay, I've been collecting comic books, and I love collecting comic books. Now, the great thing about comic books is that sometimes comic books can pick up value. How many people have ever collected maybe a comic book or baseball card and it picked up some value over time? And I brought a comic book with me. Does anybody in here want to give me $100 for this comic book? No? Cool, fine. Okay, but man, when I've been collecting my whole life, and the funny thing is that sometimes I have comic books and I don't know how valuable they are. And I grew up being a nerd and loving comic books, and I actually picked that up from a family friend. His name was John, and when I would go over to John's house when I was a kid, John didn't have any kids, but he had a large comic book collection, and every time I would go over to John's house, John would give me a comic book. He gave me my first comic book. It was Iron Man. I'll never forget it. And I had this Iron Man comic book, and I loved it, and I became obsessed with comics, and I started collecting, and every time I would go over to John's house, he would give me a comic book, and it was kind of like his little tradition. Every time I went over, he'd give me a comic book, and then me and Ashley got married, and around the time that we got married, I got an envelope in the mail, and I opened it up, and it was an Avengers comic. And in the Avengers comic, there was a card, and inside the card, there was a $100 bill. Said, "Congratulations on your wedding." And on the back of the comic book, there's a little note taped to the back of it. He said, "I hope that your marriage is filled with a lot of great teamwork, just like the Avengers." I was like, wow, it's just such a sweet gesture that John gave me. And I'm looking at the comic, and I was like, man, this comic looks a little old. It's like, I wonder how much this comic is worth. You know, that's the way my brain works. And so I went online, and I looked it up, and the comic that he had sent me was an Avengers comic, and it was worth $1,000. $1,000 for a comic book. Some of you guys are like, yeah, I will give you $100 for that comic book, Pastor Ian. So I called up John, and I was like, John, did you realize that the comic that you sent me was worth $1,000? This is 15 years ago. I was like, this comic is worth $1,000. Did you realize that when you sent it? He goes, no! If I would have known that comic was worth $1,000, I wouldn't have sent it to you. I would have sent you a cheaper comic. The comic was just to prove a point that I hope you have good teamwork in your marriage, but I didn't know that it was worth that much money. And I started thinking about it, like John had this comic and he had no idea how valuable it was, and he sent it to me and let go of it, not realizing its value. In fact, he sent me a card with $100 in it. The $100 was the thing that he thought was valuable, but little did he realize that the comic that he sent me that he thought had no value actually had a lot of value. So I was going to bring in that comic book and show you guys that comic book today, but I was like, man, I haven't checked the value of this comic book in like 15 years. I wonder how much it's worth now. And I went online, and I saw that a copy recently sold for $16,000. So I did not bring that comic in today, okay? This is a different one because I don't trust you guys that much. I love you, but I don't trust you. But the funny thing is, some of you guys are like, oh, Pastor Daniel, I'll buy that one for $100. The reality is, like, John had this comic, and he had no idea the value of the comic book, and he sent it to me not knowing its value, and then I had it, and I thought I knew its value, but the reality was, in 15 years, it has increased in value to a point where the comic book that he sent me is worth more than the car that I drive, and I had no idea that it had the value that it had in the same way that he had no idea of the value that it had. And can I let you know something this morning? There's a lot of us that have things in our life, and we've got no clue how valuable those things are. We have no clue how valuable our marriage is. We have no clue how valuable our season of life with our children right now is. We have no clue how valuable the church that God has planted us in is. We have no clue how valuable the gifts that God has deposited into our life are this morning. And I want to let you know that you have incredible value all around you if you would recognize it. And the important thing for us to understand this morning is that what you value drives you. Do you realize that when you value something, you approach it differently? I was going to bring in that other comic book until I realized it had a different value than what I thought it had. So all of a sudden, I'm not bringing it here anymore. I have to figure out what I'm going to do with that comic because it has more value than I thought it did. How many of you guys have ever had something and you didn't realize the value, and then you found out the value and it changed the way you approached it? How many of you guys ever took a relationship for granted and then you lost it or nearly came close to losing it and it changed your perception of the value of that relationship? What you value drives you. What you value motivates you to behave differently. And you can tell what somebody values by how they spend their time and by how they spend their money. Do you know that the average American spends $18,000 a year on non-essentials? That's $1,500 a month on things that you do not need to survive. That's alcohol, that's going out to a restaurant, that's entertainment. Are you listening to me this morning? That's your Netflix. We spend $1,500 a month on things that we do not need to survive. That shows our values. How we spend our time. You know, the average American spends 4.5 hours per day consuming digital media, and we only spend 30 minutes a day socializing. 4.5 hours a day on TikTok, on Facebook, on YouTube, on Netflix, and 30 minutes a day socializing. So where is our values? Are our values in relationships? And we talk about how we're lonely. Are you with me? Do we see the contradiction here? What if we begin to change our value system? What if we begin to spend more time socializing? What if we begin to spend more time getting up off the couch and spending less time consuming content and more time contributing to our community? Sometimes with my kids, how many guys do you have kids that just love screen time? You know, sometimes I have to go with my kids. I'm like, no, we're getting out of the house, you know? The other day, Ashley went down to Discovery Green. They had this big like pumpkin patch, like festival thing going on. And none of my kids wanted to go, only Micaiah, my middle son. And then they went and my two other sons were like, I don't want to go, I want to stay at home. And then Micaiah sends a video. He's like, I'm having the time of my life. Why? Because most of us, if we're being perfectly honest, we would agree that our values are out of alignment. If I were to go through this room and survey you right now and say, are your values exactly calibrated where they need to be in your life? I bet every single person in this room would say, you know what, there's somewhere in my life where my values are out of order. Am I talking to anybody in this room this morning? If I'm talking to you, say, you're talking to me, Pastor Daniel. If I'm really talking to you, say, oh, you're really talking to me. I think that almost every person in this room, you would say that my values are out of alignment. I don't treat my relationship with my spouse the way that I should. I don't value it the way that I should. I don't treat the church that God has blessed me with the way that I should. I don't make it a priority to show up every single Sunday. I was talking to a couple the other day, and they were talking about how the wife came to church and got her life right with God, and the husband came in, and she was like, how was service? And he was like, it was great. I loved it. And she was like, awesome. You ready to go back every Sunday? He goes, every Sunday? Are you with me? Like sometimes our values are out of alignment. I'll go every other Sunday, but every Sunday? What are you being driven by this morning? See, part of being a Christian is being driven by new things. You realize that today? You cannot become a new creation and still have old values. You cannot become a new creation, have old values. The Bible says that those that are in Christ are a new creation. The old things are gone away and everything becomes new. Anybody ever dated somebody that had some bad habits and you broke up with them and then they told you they were different? Anybody? I'm changed. I'm like a caterpillar that's become a butterfly. I came out of my cocoon. I've gone through a metamorphosis. What do you say? Show me the change. Show me the difference. I want to see that you're this new person that you claim to be. But a lot of us, if we're being perfectly honest, we come into a relationship with Jesus and we claim to be a new creation, but we still have the old values. We still have the old things that motivate us. We still have the old things that we care about. We're still passionate about all the things that we were passionate about before we met Jesus. How many can honestly say that since I met Christ, the things that I used to value are completely, fundamentally, quintessentially different than what they were before? It's no longer I that live, it's Christ that lives in me. The things that I used to care about have faded away, and the only thing that matters to me is Jesus. Can we say that today, church? Everybody else, y'all can clap. When you hear somebody else clap, that is a cue that you can go ahead and clap your hands too. I promise you're going to get more out of it if you put something into it today. 1 Peter chapter 4, verses 2 through 3 says this: you won't spend the rest of your lives driven, somebody say driven, by your own desires. But you will be driven, somebody say driven, to do the will of God. Are you being driven by your own desires? Or are you being driven to do the will of God? It says you have had enough in the past of evil things that godless people enjoy, their immorality, their lust, their feasting, drunkenness, wild parties, and their terrible worship of idols. How many people got to a point where you're like, I have had enough of all of that. I've had enough of everything that I indulged in when I was in college. I've had enough of everything that I've dipped my toes into when I was younger. How many of you guys, you ever reached a point where you're like, I've tried it all and I've had enough and there's nothing behind me that satisfies me anymore. I'm done with it. I'm not driven by my own desires anymore. I'm driven to do the will of God. If that doesn't happen, listen to me, you're not going to be driven by the will of God. You're going to be driven by your desires. And there's many people that claim to be in the car with Christ, but they're still being driven by their desires instead of by His Spirit. We're being driven by these old things, and we're not driven to do the will of God. Can I tell you, there's a lot of people, we're struggling with the same sins because we're driven by the same things. The reason why you struggle to overcome a particular sin is because your value system has not yet changed. My value system has to change in order for me to overcome something. In order for me to enter into a new season, a new era, a new level, the way that I used to think before has to fundamentally shift. And if it doesn't fundamentally shift, I'm going to find myself struggling with the same thing over and over and over and over again. And there's many people, listen to me, you wish, how many people, don't raise your hands, but you're in that season of life where you're like, man, I want to get it right. I want to do the right thing. I want to serve God. I want to stop doing X, Y, or Z. Why can't I stop? The reason why you can't stop is because you still have the same values. You're trying to figure out, how do I serve Jesus, but how do I keep this? Yeah. I want my hand on the cross and I want my hand on the culture. I want to be able to hold both things at the same time. And you look like the idiot teenage boy in high school that's trying to figure out, how do I keep this girl and flirt with that one? Oh, she's so beautiful, but so is she. What do I do? You have to figure out which one you value. Am I talking to anybody? You got to figure out which one is more valuable to you. Because when you figure out, when you make a decision, that's the one I want, all of a sudden, your hand lets go very easily, doesn't it? I don't want this, I want that. When you make that decision, everything changes. Overcoming is less challenging when you value something enough. There's a lot of us who have difficulty overcoming because our value system has not evolved. And when your value system evolves, your ability to overcome begins to excel. When my value system shifts, all of a sudden the thing that was hard for me before becomes easy for me now. Have you ever watched the lifestyle choices and the changes that women make when they become pregnant? And how it's so much different from before they became pregnant. Maybe a woman would enjoy drinking, or so maybe having a glass of wine, or going out with her friends, and getting something to drink or something. And now all of a sudden she has a child, and she's like, I used to enjoy doing that, but I'm not going to do it anymore. Well, why? Do you not enjoy it? No, it's not that I don't enjoy it. It's that something more valuable to me than a good time has entered into the conversation, and I am thinking for something beyond just my momentary satisfaction or pleasure. And so I am willing to suspend the things that used to be valuable to me in order to invest in the thing that has become of increasing value to me. All of a sudden, my habits change. My lifestyle choices change. The way that I treat my body changes. Everything begins to shift. Why? Because something happened that changed my value system. I used to only think about me, but now I'm thinking about me plus one. Matthew chapter 13, verses 45 through 46 says this: Heaven's kingdom realm is also like a jewel merchant in search of rare pearls. Jesus is telling a parable in this point. He's trying to tell a complicated kingdom concept in a language that people would understand in this time. He says heaven's kingdom realm is like a jewel merchant in search of rare pearls. When he discovers one very precious and exquisite pearl, he immediately gave up all that he had in exchange for it. Jesus telling the story, this jewel merchant, he dealt in exquisite stones. He dealt in valuable objects. He dealt in jewelry. He dealt in finery. And he was searching for a rare pearl. The funny thing about a jewel merchant is a jewel merchant is it's code for somebody that has tried every precious stone imaginable. Like, you don't get to be a jeweler and not become familiar with precious stones. You know what I'm saying? You know what's funny? Have you ever taken like a child and you showed them like $100 and the child's like mind is blown? It's like $100 in like $1 bills, like, ah, you know, like sometimes I do that with my kids. Like I'll go to the bank or whatever and I'll, deposit money or I'll take some money out and I'll show my kids. You know what I mean? It's like $300 in 20s and I show my kids and my kids are like, whoa, we're rich. Well, it's because they've never experienced large denominations of money before. Are you with me? Yeah. And then as my kids get older, all of a sudden $300 does not feel rich anymore. When my kids got to pay bills, $300 does not feel like a lot of money. Am I right? $300 is like how much you eat in Cheerios in a month, if we're being honest. The jewel merchant was not somebody that was easily impressed. This was a man that had experience with valuable things. This was a man that had been cultured. This was a man that had gone around. This was a man that had put his hands on things that other people could never even dream of touching. This was a man that had experienced wealth and opulence. In other words, it was somebody that had traded in all the world has to offer. And there's many of us in here, we're like, if I could just get to the finer things in life, I can be satisfied. But this jewel merchant had experienced the finer things, and he's still looking for more. Can I tell you, all you got to do is take one look at a Hollywood story and know that it is not riches and fame that fixes anything. The most broken, depressed people in the world are the people that are the richest. Money doesn't solve your problems. It might make you comfortable, but listen, if you got problems, you can have problems with money or without money. If you're depressed, you can be depressed with money or without money. And yes, having a bathtub that's the size of a Maserati might help you feel a little bit less depressed, but if you got depression in your system, you're going to struggle with it no matter how wealthy you are. And this man had traded in all of these fine things in life. Pearls in biblical times were the most valuable treasure of the ancient world. In fact, they fought wars over pearls in biblical times. People would go to war for pearls. So Jesus is talking not about insignificant things. He's not trying to belittle the things that you are chasing. Can I tell you that there is value in your career? There is value in you having a nice house. There is value in you having material wealth. There is value in you having good investments and having a good portfolio. There is value in all of these things. But can I tell you something? Even though these things do have monetary, earthly value, you will still find yourself acquiring all of these things and still feeling unsatisfied at the end of the day. And I think every man, woman, and child in this room knows what it's like to think, if I just get this thing, I will be happy. And you get that thing and it doesn't satisfy you. And this man realizes, I've seen every pearl this world has to offer, so I'm looking for one that beats them all. I'm looking for one that blows them all out of the water. And it says, when he discovered one very precious and exquisite pearl, he immediately gave up all that he had in exchange for it. That's what it looks like when we find the kingdom of Jesus Christ. That's what it looks like when we are driven by the things of God, because there's one pearl, one way, one truth, one life, one Jesus. There is none like him. There is none above him. There is none beside him. And when we find him, he eclipses the splendor of earthly things. And many of us spend time trying to accrue wealth by amassing a multitude of lesser pearls, of subjective truths, of temporary gains. Yet there is only one eternal, priceless, peerless, precious pearl. There is only one king, and his name is Jesus. And he is of such great value that he wants to drive our lives. Are you driven by the things of true value this morning? Are you driven by these rare pearls? Are you driven by these rare things, the thing that only exists in the kingdom of heaven? Because if we're being perfectly honest, most of us are satisfied with mediocre pearls. We're satisfied with mediocrity. And we live in a culture, a consumer culture, where we are increasingly satisfied with whatever is fast and easy and cheap. We're not concerned with craftsmanship or with true value. And I remember when I was a kid, my grandmother was a fancy woman. Pinkies out. My grandmother was how many of y'all had a fancy grandma? a fancy woman. I got me a fancy grandma. She was born in Europe, in Germany, before the war. She was a child during World War II. And as a result, when she was very, very young, they had money. But then the war came and the war tore through Germany. And as a young girl, they had nothing. And she grew up having to hunt for food as a child. And she lost her mom at a young age through the war and all of these things. And then she met my paternal grandfather and they got married. And then they came over here and he actually brought her to Houston when my mom was a child, and he abandoned her with 3 kids, and she didn't know how to speak much English, and she actually went to Lakewood Church when it was first starting out and got saved there, so I'm very thankful for what they did in the story of my family history. But then she grew up not having much, and she was working hard, and I don't know many people that have the work ethic of my grandmother. My grandmother will work like men under the table, And she came up and she met who became my grandfather, and they got married, and they both worked really, really hard, and they didn't have a lot for a long time, and then they finally got to that season of their life. When your kids are older, you're starting to become a grandparent where you're becoming more established, and as she got into her 50s and so on, she finally started getting to that place where she had the ability to have nicer things. And my grandmother developed an appreciation for having the nice things that she never had in her life. And she had this really nice fur coat. And I remember my grandma would always wear a fur. You don't see people in fur coats anymore. My grandma would always wear this fur coat. It was gorgeous. And then she would wear nice jewelry. I remember as a kid, she would show me her jewelry case, and she would open it up. It was one of those ones you open it up and it's like, And my grandmother, she would tell my grandpa all the time, don't get me anything through the year. Save up every penny, and on my birthday or on my anniversary or something like that, I want you to get me this really, really nice piece of jewelry. And she would always save up, and she would wait, and she would even contribute. She's like, here's some extra money if it's a little bit too much, But she had it picked out a year in advance, the necklace that she wanted. And then she'd get the necklace, and it would be this beautiful gold necklace, and there would be diamonds on it. And my grandmother would walk around ha na 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 na, with her little fur coat, with the little earrings, you know what I mean? And she'd come walking in oh, we should go out to dinner tonight, She was a fancy woman, and I remember her just always just dressing to the nines, always exquisite. If she wore a piece of jewelry, you knew it was valuable. People don't do that anymore. You know what I mean? Yeah. Nobody in here is wearing fancy jewelry. Not really, I'm going to get in trouble for saying this, but guys, when was the last time you went into a jewelry store and bought your wife something? Shut up, Daniel, shut up. Shut up. I'm seeing elbows going into rib cage. When was the last time you went into a jewelry store and bought something of value? We just don't do it anymore. Am I right? Outside of wedding jewelry, we're not really going to the jewelry store and buying fancy jewelry. Why? Because we have Claire's. You know what I'm saying? I can go to Claire's and I can get something that fools people from 30 feet away for $7. You know what I'm saying? It's not real. Yeah. I was sitting with a wealthy gentleman a couple of weeks ago. He was sitting across the table from me, and he looked at this ring on my finger. He's like, I love that ring. He's like, where did you get it? Who made it? I was like, Temu? It's not valuable. He's like, let me see. And he's looking. He's like, oh. He's like, I thought that was silver. I'm like, I promise you it's not. If I leave it on my finger for more than 3 hours, my finger starts to look like Frankenstein. You know what I'm saying? I put this on, by the time service is over, I need to take it off or I need healing. One of the two, I got this off of Amazon, you know what I'm saying? But it looks good enough to where somebody sitting across the table who's wearing legitimate rings would look at mine and think that it looks good. And that's all we want today. We just want to be able to pass inspection. We just want people to look at us and think that we're doing better than we actually are, but it's not actually anything of value. And so we go and we compromise and we take things that are not good for us and we prop them up and we use things that are subpar like Whataburger just because we don't have a value system that's where it needs to be. And so we're just buying junk from Amazon that doesn't hold any worth. And the question that we ask is not, is this valuable, but does it fool people? Does it fool people? And we buy fool's pearls. Are you with me today? Yeah. We buy knockoff items. We buy fake things. And at the end of the day, we know the cost of everything and the value of nothing. We know what everything costs, but we don't know what its value is. And when you find something of worth, listen to me this morning, church, you will sacrifice everything for it. How many people you've ever found something that truly matters to you and you're willing to get rid of everything that you have in order to acquire it? I remember me and my wife, when we were first starting off, I really wanted to get involved in real estate. I really wanted to do real estate investments. And I remember that one time there was this opportunity to buy this busted up old house, but I knew that if we fixed it up, it would be worth some money. And I came to my wife, I'm like, we've got to figure out how to do it. And we don't have the money to make it work. And I don't make enough to be able to qualify for the loans and all this stuff. I'm like, but I know this is a great deal. Like, I worked really hard to find it. I found this incredible deal. And if we could just buy it. And we're like, but we don't have enough. So then I started going around my house and I started being like, I don't need that motorcycle. I don't need this. I started looking at investment accounts that I had from when I worked in the school district. I'm like, I need to close out that investment account. I need to move this around. I need to free up this. I need to move this fund over here. And I started making some changes, and I started liquidating all the accounts that I had. I started selling things that I didn't need, and we scraped together enough to be able to make the investment. Why? Because I knew that if I could just make the investment, then that would set my family up for our future. And I knew that all the stuff that I had in my garage that was collecting dust was not going to set my family up the way that making the investment would. Can I tell you something? When you find something of worth, you've got to be willing to sacrifice everything to get it. And most of us, we're trying to figure out how to hold on to both and pursue the things of God, and you can't. Hebrews chapter 11 verses 6 says, and without faith it's impossible to please God. It's impossible. God is not pleased when you're holding on to the things that make sense to you while trying to chase the things of Him. God's like, that doesn't look like faith, that looks like fear. That looks like security, and I'm asking you to step out into the unknown. I'm asking you to value what I have put in front of you. I'm asking you, would you please let go of that to pursue me? And if you do, I'll call that faith, and I will count your faith as righteousness. Without faith, it's impossible to please God, for it behooves the one drawing near to God to believe that He exists and that He becomes a rewarder for those who earnestly seek Him out. God is the rewarder of those who earnestly seek Him. Another translation says those who diligently seek Him. Can I let you know that reward demands an action? If you want to get a reward, you got to do something to earn a reward. Am I right? Anybody in here, you've ever won an award before? Did you get it for failing? Did you get it for not showing up? Did you get it for not trying? Did you get it for doing the bare minimum, or were you given a reward because you actually put in an effort to accomplish something to receive the award? Can I let you know God does not give participation trophies. God is looking at you saying, hey, I'm inviting you into a process, and if you would follow me, if you would trust me, if you would chase after me, I will reward you. I will bless you. I will pour my Spirit upon you. I will be with you. I will go before you. I will put my hands on the things that lay in front of you. Are you diligently seeking God out? Are you searching for those rare pearls, rewards that only come from God? Because it takes faith to search after God, to believe that He exists. And I think that for many believers in this room this morning, we call ourselves believers, but we're actually not believers, we're just bettors. And we're betting that God is maybe perhaps the safest bet that we can make. But if we're really believers, we change the way that we invest our lives. Are you with me? Many of us, we are hedging our bets with God. We're like, I need to diversify my eternity. I'm going to be a good person over here. I'm going to do this. I'm going to go to church. I'm going to dabble a little bit here because I'm trying to diversify my eternity. If God exists, if God is real, if eternity is real, I want to make sure I get into heaven. I want to hedge my bets. I want to diversify my portfolio. But listen, those of us that believe that God is God, that God exists, that God is real, that He is the way, the truth, the life, that there is no other way but through Him, we live our lives differently. We invest differently. We go all in on God. Can I ask you a question? Do you believe that this pearl is worth staking everything on? Do you believe that this kingdom, that this cross, that this Christ is worth staking everything you have on? Are you sure? How certain are you? How certain are you? I'm glad. Let's share that with everybody else. How certain are you? How certain are you that this is the thing? Are you willing to bet your future on it? Are you willing to bet your finances on it? Are you willing to bet your family on it? Are you willing to go all in on Jesus? I don't play poker. I don't know how. I don't know what any of the cards mean. If I play poker with you, you could take all of my money. I don't get it. I've never gambled. I don't know how any of that works. But you know what I love? I love watching movies of people that gamble. You guys ever watch a good gamble movie? There's always somebody sitting at a poker table and everybody around. It's always smoky, you know what I'm saying? It's always smoky, always dark. There's always shadows, always some sweating, and there's always somebody sitting at a poker table, and they're sitting there, and then they look at their cards, and they look up, and then they push all of their chips in on the center of the table, and everybody around is like, oh, I declare, like, push it all in. And somebody's looking at them like, you're an idiot. What are you doing going all in? You're risking everything. Don't you know what cards I have? And there's always that moment where they put their cards down and they're like, that's what I got. And then they win everything. Can I let you know, some of us, we're sitting at the poker table of life and we just need to go all in on Jesus. We need to say, you know what? I'm looking at my cards. I know what I got and I'm going to go all in on him. I'm not keeping some for what if. I'm not holding some to the side just in case. I'm not pulling out some sections of what I have to put in just in case this Jesus thing doesn't work out. I need to have something to fall back on. I don't need no safety net because Jesus is my everything. So I'm going all in on him. I'm putting all my chips in on the center of the table. Are you that certain? Are you that sure? Because he's giving you the cards. Are you that sure that the hand that he has dealt you is the hand that's going to sustain you? The Apostle Paul was sure in Philippians chapter 3, verse 7, he said this, I once thought these things were valuable, but now I consider them worthless because of what Christ has done. Yes, everything else is worthless compared to the infinite value of knowing Christ Jesus my Lord. For his sake, I've discarded everything else, counting it as garbage so I could gain Christ. Are you at that point where everything that you thought was valuable before is worthless to you now, and the only thing that matters to me is Christ? Because I don't have enough pockets to carry everything. Are you with me today? I only have so much room for things that I can take with me, so I have to make sure that I'm only taking what I need for this season. And everything that I used to think was valuable before is no longer valuable. You know, in the early 1900s, the Titanic sank. Most of you guys, you know Titanic. When I say Titanic, you're like, my heart will go on now. Most of you guys, I say Titanic, you're like, I'll never let go, Jack. But that's all you know about Titanic. You know, there's a lot of really interesting history around the Titanic. You know that 11 millionaires drowned with the Titanic. In a time where there was not many millionaires. That would be the equivalent of like a billionaire. If 11 billionaires died in the same shipwreck, that would be a big story. If Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, Mark Zuckerberg, if Oprah, like all these people, 11 of them died in the same boat, you guys are like, this is the biggest news story that's ever happened. In the Titanic, 11 millionaires died in one night. One of the few wealthy men who survived was a man that got on the life rafts early when some people were not taking it seriously. And the life rafts were being sent out half empty. His name was Major A.H. Puchin. He was a wealthy man. And when he got on the boat, he later told the story that he left behind in the safe in his stateroom $300,000 worth of money, jewelry, and securities in the safety deposit box inside of his cabin. This is the equivalent of millions and millions of dollars in today's money. I want you to imagine leaving millions and millions of dollars in jewelry, in cash, and walking away. And they asked him, sir, why did you not go into your stateroom and retrieve your money and jewelry? He said, the money seemed a mockery to me at the time as the ship was sinking. He said, I knew not if we would survive. I knew not when we would be rescued. So it did not seem prudent to me to remove my jewelry and my money. So instead, I picked up 3 oranges, for I had limited space. So this man left behind millions of dollars, and he picked up 3 oranges that on the surface had no value, that the day before had no value, that the day before he would not trade 1 jewel for, but now that the ship is going down, his value system has changed. And the things that he used to think were valuable before have lost their value, and he knew in that moment, I don't know how long it's going to be with me on the ship, and I need some sustenance. So the things that became valuable to him were not valuable anymore. Why? Because he didn't have room to take everything with him. Can I tell you, you don't have enough room in your life for God and culture. You don't have enough room in your life to value the things that you valued before Christ and also value the things that you value after you met Christ. Can I tell you this morning that God wants you to change your value system? 1 Corinthians chapter 9, verses 24 through 25 says this, don't you realize that in a race everyone runs, but only one person gets the prize? So run to win. All athletes are disciplined in their training, and they do it to win a prize that will fade away, but we do it for an eternal prize. Can I tell you, everybody is living for things that are not going to last. Can I tell you, the beauty that you're living for today, young lady, is not going to last you? Ask your grandma. Like, it's not going to last. Dudes, the muscles that you're living for today, at some point, they're not going to look the way that they do today. The car that you've been wanting, the career that you've been wanting, all of these things will fade away. But we serve a God that is establishing a kingdom that will never fade away. If you would trade the things that have no value for the things that do. Early on in our nation's history, there was a gold rush on the West Coast, and many people left their lives of comfort, left the value that they had in the cities on the East Coast, and they traveled to the West Coast to pursue their fortune. Many people sold all that they had and went to go and find gold so that they might become infinitely wealthier. And very, very few people actually found gold and became wealthy in the gold rush, but even more people found nothing. But there was a subset of people that, this is a historical fact, there were people that went out looking for gold, and because they did not know what gold looked like, they found a substance called pyrite. And when they found pyrite, they believed that they had found a gold vein, and so they would go out and buy the land that they found the pyrite on so that they would have the claim to the gold, and they would go back and mine the pyrite, they would bring it in, and then an expert would look at it and say, you don't have gold, you have fool's gold. Can I tell you that many of us were going and buying land filled with fool's gold? We are spending our life buying fool's pearls because culture tells us it's valuable, because it looks shiny. Can I tell you, not all that glitters is gold? I want to close with one story before we dismiss this morning. In April of 2021, Bernie Madoff died in prison. He was serving a 150-year sentence for money laundering, securities fraud, and several other felonies. He ran the largest Ponzi scheme in history, worth over $65 billion. $65 billion Ponzi scheme. On December 10th of 2008, his sons, Mark and Andrew, turned him into the authorities, and they told the police that their father had confessed to them that the asset management unit of his firm was a massive Ponzi scheme, and they quoted him as saying it was one big lie. He was found guilty of defrauding thousands of investors out of tens of billions of dollars over the course of at least 17 years, possibly longer. Now, here's the sad part. This was a man that lived for building this empire. This was a man that lived for amassing wealth, and he ran a Ponzi scheme worth $65 billion. That's a lot of money to manage. And he lived for that. And at the end of his life, he was serving a 150-year sentence. He'd been in prison for a long time. His sons got arrested. One of his sons committed suicide on the second-year anniversary of his father's arrest because of the devastation that it had brought to his family, and the other son died within 10 years. The things of true value were lost to him. He lost his freedom. He lost his children, he lost his family, he lost his name, he lost his legacy, he lost his empire. Why? Because he was chasing after something that did not have the same value as the things in his life that he took for granted. And people all around him were eager to throw in and invest with him. They thought his investments were valuable. He had people begging to get in, and while he provided returns whenever they asked for, ultimately people who invested with him lost everything, because that's the way that the world works. That's the way that culture works. We hear people talking about what they get out of what the world has to offer, but in the end, they have nothing to show for it. Can I let you know something this morning? This world is a Ponzi scheme. This world is a Ponzi scheme. There's a lot of dollars involved, and people seem to be making a lot of money, and you look at people and they look happy, but man, anytime we look at anybody in Hollywood, any celebrity, any wealthy person, we realize, man, they don't have it. They might look like they do, but they don't. Every time I talk to somebody who says this next relationship is going to be the thing, this next opportunity, it never pans out. Can I tell you, I've seen it all. And like a jewel merchant, I've had jewels come through my hands. I've interacted with these things. I've pursued these things. I've tried these things. But I'm looking for a rare pearl. I'm looking for something of value. I'm looking for something that is worth leaving everything else behind, because I want to be driven by what matters most. What do you want driving your values this morning? Do you want to be driven by pearls, Ponzi schemes, prizes, or do you want to be driven by the cross of Christ? Do you want to be driven by the kingdom of God? Do you want to be driven by these things of eternal value that will never lose their value, that thieves cannot break in and steal, that moth or rust cannot destroy, that no matter how much time passes, these things of God are eternal and they stand? I don't know about you, but I know that for me and my family, I want to be driven by the things of eternal value. I want to be driven by the things of God. I want to be driven by the things of the kingdom. I want to be driven by things that are higher than my ways.